These are the beef prices California shoppers are facing right now, and they're about to get much worse. The average American family spends nearly double what they paid for beef just 5 years ago. And if you live in California, you're getting hit even harder than the rest of the country. Let me paint you a picture of what's really happening. Right now, the United States has the smallest cattle herd since 1951. Think about that for a second. We haven't seen cattle numbers this low since Harry Truman was president. And California, despite being the fourth largest cattle-producing state, watches its beef prices soar 20 to 30% higher than the national average. So why is this happening? Well, it starts with drought. For the past several years, drought conditions across major cattle-producing regions have forced ranchers to make an impossible choice: sell off their herds or watch them starve. When you don't have water, you don't have grass. When you don't have grass, you can't feed cattle. It's that simple, and that devastating. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just a weather story. This is a story about market concentration, regulatory pressures, and a supply chain that's been pushed to its breaking point. 4 companies, Tyson Foods, Cargill, JBS USA, and National Beef Packing, control 85% of beef processing in America. When you have that kind of market concentration, you have to ask yourself, who's really setting these prices? Let's talk numbers. In January 2024, the average retail beef price hit $7.89 per pound nationally. That's up from $7.21 just a year earlier. But if you're shopping at Safeway in Sacramento or Ralph's in Los Angeles, you're looking at ground beef prices between $6.50 and $8 a pound. Want a nice ribeye for dinner? You're looking at $25 a pound or more. And if you're buying organic or grass-fed, forget about it. You're paying $12 to $18 just for ground beef. The math is brutal for California families. The average American eats 58 pounds of beef per year. At current California prices, that's nearly $500 per person, per year, just for beef. For a family of 4, you're looking at $2,000 annually, and that's if prices stay where they are today. But they won't stay there. According to livestock economist Dr. Darrell Peel from Oklahoma State University and analysts like Lance Zimmerman from Rabobank, the rebuilding process for America's cattle herds will take at least 2 to 3 years. That means elevated prices aren't going away anytime soon. In fact, they're likely to get worse before they get better. Here's something most people don't realize. California's beef prices aren't just higher because of supply and demand. The state's unique regulatory environment adds significant costs at every level of production. Higher minimum wages, stricter environmental regulations, and water costs that are 3 times higher than Midwest states all contribute to the premium California consumers pay at the checkout counter. Think about water for a moment. A single cow requires 1.5 to 2 acres of grazing land in optimal conditions. But California doesn't have optimal conditions. The state's water costs for cattle operations are triple what ranchers pay in states like Nebraska or Kansas. Every gallon of water, every bale of hay, every hour of labor costs more in California. And guess who pays for that? You do, every time you buy a pound of ground beef. The timeline of how we got here reads like a cascade of disasters. 2020 brought COVID-19, which disrupted meat processing plants across the country. 2021 saw supply chain issues compound the problem, with prices spiking 20%. 2022 brought historic drought that forced massive herd culling. By 2023, cattle inventory had reached those 1951 levels I mentioned earlier. Now in 2024, we're in what the industry calls a rebuilding phase. But rebuilding takes time that consumers will spend paying premium prices. Some people argue we should just import more beef to bring prices down. It sounds simple, right? But American ranchers worry that increased imports would undercut domestic producers, who are already struggling. It's a classic economic dilemma. Help consumers in the short term, or protect producers for the long term? There's another factor that doesn't get enough attention: processing capacity. Even when we had more cattle, we've had a bottleneck problem at processing plants since COVID. Those 4 big companies I mentioned earlier, they control the pace at which cattle become beef. When processing slows down, prices go up. It's supply and demand at its most basic level. California shoppers have started adapting in ways that would have seemed unthinkable a few years ago. Families are buying cheaper cuts, learning to cook with alternatives like chicken and pork, and some are even organizing buying clubs to purchase whole sides of beef directly from ranchers. It's a return to old-fashioned economics. Cut out the middleman when the middleman gets too expensive. But here's what really concerns me about where we're headed. The USDA Economic Research Service projects that herd rebuilding will be, quote, slow and deliberate. That's government speak for this is going to take a really long time. And while the herds are rebuilding, demand isn't going down. Americans love their beef. We consume more beef per capita than almost any other country in the world. The California Department of Food and Agriculture is caught in a tough position. They're trying to balance environmental concerns with economic reality. The state is considering additional livestock regulations that could further increase costs. It's a political hot potato that no one wants to touch, but everyone has to eat. Meanwhile, alternative protein companies are watching these price increases with great interest. When ground beef hits $8 a pound, suddenly that plant-based patty doesn't look so expensive anymore. It's changing the entire landscape of American food consumption, driven not by ideology, but by simple economics. There's a human cost to all of this that goes beyond dollars and cents. I think about the ranching families who've been forced to sell herds their families built over generations. I think about the California families choosing between beef and other necessities. I think about the restaurant owners watching their food costs destroy their profit margins. The federal government has launched an investigation into potential price manipulation in the beef industry. It's an acknowledgement that something doesn't quite add up when retail prices stay high, even as cattle prices fluctuate. But investigations take time, and time is something consumers paying $8 for ground beef don't have. So what does this mean for 2025 and 2026? Based on current trends and expert projections, California beef prices will likely remain elevated through at least 2026. The combination of slow herd rebuilding, continued drought risk, high regulatory costs, and concentrated market power creates a perfect storm for sustained high prices. If you're a California shopper, you need to get creative. Buy in bulk when there are sales. Learn to use every part of the meat you buy. Consider less popular cuts that offer better value. Form relationships with local ranchers if possible. And yes, maybe eat a little less beef and explore other protein options. The beef price crisis in California isn't just about one thing. It's not just drought or market concentration, or regulations or processing capacity. It's all of these factors combining to create a situation where one of America's most basic foods has become a luxury item for many families. These skyrocketing beef prices aren't just numbers on a screen. They represent real challenges for real families trying to put food on the table. And while experts talk about market cycles and herd rebuilding, California shoppers are left to figure out how to navigate a new reality where a simple hamburger dinner has become a special occasion. The question isn't whether beef prices will come down. They will, eventually. The question is whether California families can weather the storm until they do. And based on everything we're seeing, that storm is far from over.